And this illustration often used is the one of the monkeys at the typewriter. Okay, so we have a monkey sitting at a typewriter, and the claim here is, basically, if you leave chance and time long enough, you will get life, don't worry about it. Yes, it's strange, yes, it's wonderful, but leave enough matter, 600 million years on Earth, and you will have life. So, the monkey's sitting at the typewriter, and the chances are, eventually, he produces the complete works of Shakespeare, so what's the problem? But he doesn't manage to do it in 600 million years. So what I decided to do to run the numbers is instead of saying type the complete works of Shakespeare, I just ran the numbers for how long would it take a monkey typing at 1 keystroke a second to type to be or not to be, that is the question. I don't know how long you think that would be, maybe you could have a guess. Would it be less or more than 600 million years, which is the period life on Earth is supposed to have emerged within? And when I ran the numbers, to be or not to be, that is the question, takes 12.6 trillion years to type just that phrase. And a DNA string, that complexity emerged by chance, undirected, within 600 million years. Again, it's mathematically possible, but it's so incredibly unlikely that it would have, that it tilts me in favour of the Christian story in which God creating life is simply a question of saying, let there be, and there was.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about monkey and the typewriter. In the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include 600 million years on Earth, complete works of Shakespeare, typing at 1 keystroke, and the period of life on Earth. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as 12.6 trillion years, a DNA string, mathematically possible, Christian story, and God creating life. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial information about monkey and the typewriter in this lecture.
Unemployment, lost productivity, and lost contributions to the community are typical and usually uncounted costs of homelessness, and they can be addressed with an integrated strategy. Integrated housing also addresses environmental and sustainability challenges. We incorporate green design principles to create healthier buildings for our residents and staff, limit emissions, and contain energy costs to preserve affordability and reduce the impact of our buildings on the environment. And the opportunity for mutually beneficial public-private collaborations. Corporate investors match the contributions of government to pay for the acquisition and redevelopment of the Prince George. Corporate investors receive valuable tax credit and other benefits from the federal government and significant marketing benefits for their brand locally. Philanthropy supported the initial program and business planning for the project. Student architects from a local university designed and built an entry-floor art gallery for use by community arts organizations.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about integrated housing. In the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include unemployment, lost productivity, lost contributions, costs of homelessness, environmental and sustainability challenges, and green design principles. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as healthier buildings, residents and staff, energy costs, public-private collaborations, corporate investors, and valuable tax credits. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial information about sustainable housing in this lecture.
It's difficult to work on the human brain for several reasons. First of all, it develops in the uterus when the embryo is developing, and as a consequence, it's not very easily accessible at the early stages of development. And then on top of all that, it develops rather slowly over a period of months. So we've chosen to work on what's called popularly in science a model system, the frog nervous system. And this is quite attractive because the fertilization of the eggs occurs externally, typically in pond water. Here, of course, we do it artificially in the lab. And then the embryos are accessible throughout the entire period of development as a consequence. In addition, the maturation of the embryos is quite rapid, and the nervous system effectively is fully blown, fully developed within 24 hours after fertilization of the egg. So it's quite a rapid process. In biology generally, and neuroscience specifically, different model systems are best suited for the solution of particular problems. And so a whole variety of different species are in active use today, from fruit flies to nematode worms, zebrafish, frogs, which are our model, mice, rats, and so on. All of these have proven useful in different ways.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about human brain. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include the early stages of development, period of months, science, the frog nervous system, and the fertilization of the eggs. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as period of development, the maturation of the embryos, biology, neuroscience, a variety of different species, mice, and rats. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about human brain in this lecture.
So when we talk about the polar regions, just to clarify exactly what we mean, we have first of all the Arctic at the top of the Earth and the Antarctic at the bottom. So the Arctic was named after the Greek word for bear. Now surprisingly it's not after the polar bears that live in the Arctic, but it's after the Little and Great Bear constellations that can be seen in the sky. Now the Greeks also hypothesized that there would be an anti-Arctic, which is how we get the name Antarctica, but of course it wasn't discovered until much later on. Now these regions are opposite in many ways other than just their names and their location on the globe. So if we look at the Arctic first of all, the Arctic is actually ocean surrounded by land. So we can see here, this is the UK down here, and this is kind of Russia, and then America and Canada around here. So there is a bit of land covered in ice in the Arctic, which is Greenland here, but mostly all this area here. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't realise that this isn't actually land. The North Pole isn't on land, it's just one big ocean. So if you were to go to the North Pole, you could stand on it, but if you were to drill down through the ice, you would find ocean beneath it.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about polar regions. In the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include Arctic at the top of the Earth, Antarctic at the bottom, Greek word for bear, and Great Bear constellation. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as regions are opposite in many ways, location on the globe. Arctic is actually ocean surrounded by land, UK, Russia, Greenland, North Pole, and Big Ocean. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about polar regions in this lecture.
So to determine where an earthquake happened within the Earth, you need to define where the patch was on a fault within the Earth that moved to generate that earthquake. So earthquakes happen in the Earth rather than on the surface of the Earth. The earthquake might be a shallow earthquake, but it's still within the Earth, not on the surface. What we often hear spoken of about the location of an earthquake is the epicenter. And this is defined as the place on Earth's surface which is directly above the focus or the area that moved during the earthquake. So for example, the 1989 World Series earthquake in the Bay Area is officially called the Loma Prieta earthquake because there's a geographic location, Loma Prieta, which is directly above where that earthquake occurred. To accurately determine then, tell somebody where an earthquake happened, you have to tell them the epicenter and then also the depth within the earth where that earthquake occurred. That defines uniquely then the location, the patch of a fault that moved to generate that earthquake.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about earthquake. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include fault within the earth, the surface of the earth, location of an earthquake, and the epicenter. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as directly above the focus, 1989 World Series earthquake, geographic location, the depth within the earth, and location of the patch of a fault. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about earthquake in this lecture.
But when we move into working with communities, we have to recognise that the communities have to be the authority in their language. And actually, a woman in the class I'm teaching at Sydney at the moment, a Korean woman, expressed this very nicely, although she was talking about something else. She was distinguishing expertise from authority. And certainly linguists, because of our training, we do have expertise in certain very narrow areas of language. But we don't have the authority over what to do with that knowledge or what to do with other knowledge that the community produces. And I guess for me, the bottom line is languages are lost because of the dominance of one people over another. And that's not rocket science. It's not hard to work that out. But then what that means is, if in working with language revival, we continue to hold the authority, we actually haven't done anything towards undoing how languages are lost in the first place. So in a sense, the languages are still lost if the authority is still lost.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about language and authority. In the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include women in the class, distinguishing expertise from authority, linguists, and narrow areas of language. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as knowledge that community produces, dominance of one people over another, rocket science, and language revival. In conclusion, the speaker said that the language is still lost if the authority is still lost.
NASA has just released a new image captured by the Hubble Space Telescope, revealing what it looked like moments before galactic clusters, cosmic clusters that consist of many galaxies held together by gravity smashed into each other. The result of this cosmic collision of galaxy clusters was the formation of a new massive structure called MAX J0416.1 that lies roughly 4.3 billion light-years from Earth in the constellation Eridanus. Pictures of galactic clusters sometimes don't look real because every single one of the tiny, stereotypically spiral disks in the image above looks an awful lot like they were just photoshopped haphazardly onto a black background. But these images are completely real and also incredible because each one of those galaxies contains billions of stars and countless planets, just like our own Milky Way contains the planets and the stars of our solar system. To create the image above, which the team is calling the Cosmic Kaleidoscope, researchers combined data captured by 3 different telescopes set to capture individual parts of the sky. Each telescope shows a different element of the cluster, allowing astronomers to study MAX J0416 in detail.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about an image captured by the Hubble Space Telescope. In the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include NASA, galactic clusters, cosmic clusters, galaxy clusters, galaxies held together by gravity, cosmic collision, and 4.3 billion light-years from Earth. In addition, she also discussed various other aspects such as spiral disks, images are real and incredible, billions of stars and planets, Milky Way, solar system, 3 different telescopes, and individual parts of sky. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial information about galaxies in this lecture.
Now, we spend a lot of time thinking about how climate will affect crops. But crops affect climate themselves, and they do this in 2 ways. First of all, about 1/4 of the land's surface is used for growing crops. Another 10–15% are used for pasture. So a substantial amount of the land's surface is used in crop and agricultural production. And how we use that land affects our climate. If we were, for example, to deforest a substantial area and replace it with an annual crop such as soybean, then we would alter the characteristics of the land's surface, alter the way that water and heat flows from the land's surface to the atmosphere and back, and ultimately change the regional climate if there's a large enough change to the land surface. So this is an absolutely fascinating topic, and one that's really quite difficult to understand because of the complexity. It's difficult because it needs us as crop scientists to work even more closely with our climate scientist colleagues. And it's difficult because we have to join our models together.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about climate and crops. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include 1/4 of the land surface, growing crops, substantial amount of land surface, and agricultural production. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as deforestation of a substantial area, soybean, characteristics of the land surface, water and heat, regional climate, crop scientists, and climate scientists. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial information about crops and climate in this lecture.
Why is early child development important? The overarching answer is because it is a determining influence on subsequent life chances and health. But why is that? The principal reason is to be found in the fact that in the early years of life, there are a wide range of very key milestones or sensitive periods in brain and biological development. By the time kids reach school age, a huge amount has taken place in terms of their opportunities to develop basic competencies that will code for success in later years. For instance, their visual systems are connecting to the deep structures in the brain that are associated with emotional control. That means that children who have a consistent set of human faces that they see early on in life, going through a wide range of emotions, develop the neurobiological ability to decode emotion and to develop a sense of belonging. Those children who are neglected or grow up in environments which are violent or emotionally barren develop a completely different style of coping early on in life and a different set of biological connections which do not work so well adaptively later on.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about early child development. In the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include subsequent life chances and health, early years of life, a wide range of key milestones, sensitive periods in brain and biological development. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as basic competencies, visual systems, deep structures in the brain, emotional control, human faces, a wide range of emotions, a sense of belonging, and environments which are violent or emotionally barren. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial information about childhood development.
The future of our cities, if we do it right, is going to be super cool. I mean, we're talking about growing biological material as the literal foundation of a whole city. We're going to get there though. Hang on, just bear with me. We can live in a variety of different places. So when you think of deserts, you probably think like brown and dead. It's not great, but we could actually transform the Sahara into a pretty lush desert. NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies laid out a plan to pump desalinated seawater from the coast into the Sahara. And it could use these pipes to irrigate fields of eucalyptus trees. As the trees took root, they would replenish the soil and cause more rainfall, which would then cause even more growth. Because eucalyptus, it survives well in heat, and then it could be watered using those pipes. But over time, as they took root, it would lower the Sahara's temperature by 8 degrees Celsius, bring clouds in because of increased humidity to reflect the sun's rays back into space, cooling it down a little more, and the trees could capture 8 billion tons of carbon per year, which would be amazing. Of course, there's a few problems with this, the main problem being that it costs like $2 trillion.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about future of our cities. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include biological material, foundation of a whole city, a variety of places, lush deserts and Sahara. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as NASA, desalinated seawater, eucalyptus trees, rainfall, increased humidity, sun's rays, and 8 billion tons of carbon. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about future cities in this lecture.
To understand the fight or flight response, it helps to think about the role of emotions in our lives. Many of us would prefer to focus on our logical, thinking nature and ignore our sometimes troublesome emotions, but emotions have a purpose. Our most basic emotions, like fear, anger, or disgust, are vital messengers. They evolved as signals to help us meet our basic needs for self-preservation and safety. It would be dangerous to be indecisive about a threat to our survival, so the brain runs information from our senses through the most primitive, reactive parts of our brain first. These areas of the brain control instinctive responses, and they don't do too much thinking. This most primitive part of our brain communicates with the rest of our brain and our body to create signals we can't ignore easily. Powerful emotions and symptoms.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about the fight or flight response. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include the role of emotions in our lives, logical thinking nature, troublesome emotions, fear, anger, disgust, and vital messengers. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as basic needs, self-preservation, threats to our survival, primitive reactive parts of our brain, instinctive responses, and powerful emotions and symptoms. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about fight or flight response in this lecture.
Only one country, tiny little Bhutan, wedged between China and India, has adopted the gross national happiness as the central index of government policy, and actually has had a good deal of success in education and in health and in economic growth and in environmental preservation, and they have a rather sophisticated way of measuring the effects of different policies on people's happiness. But they are the only country to go that far. But you're now beginning to get other countries interested enough to do kind of white paper policy analyses about whether happiness research, what effects would it have if we used it more for public policy. You're beginning to get countries like Australia, France, Great Britain that are considering publishing regular statistics on happiness. So it's beginning to become a subject of greater interest for policymakers and legislators in different advanced countries.
In this lecture, the speaker was talking about Bhutan. At the beginning of the lecture, the speaker covered many topics which include China, India, gross national happiness, the Central Index of Government Policy, health, economic growth, and environmental preservation. In addition, he also discussed various other aspects such as effects of different policies, people's happiness, Australia, France, Great Britain, regular statistics on happiness, and policy makers and legislators. In conclusion, the speaker provided very crucial and interesting information about Bhutan in this lecture.